My name is Bernadette Smith, and I'm a keynote speaker and writer. My pronouns are she and her. Welcome to 5 Things in 15 Minutes, my weekly show where I still bring good vibes to DEI. That is good vibes to diversity, equity, and inclusion with a little dash of corporate social responsibility. What I found is there are lots of news stories about what's going wrong in the world and lots of negative data, but there are also a lot of things going right. That's what I like to focus on. I search for stories that we can be inspired by and learn from. My hope is to inspire you to experiment with some of these actions and policies to help you build a more inclusive world. In this week's episode, I'm joined by Tom Alexander, him, CEO and co founder at Holistic. This week, our conversation is about paychecks getting a boost, pop stars signing for change, women running the show in baseball, and more. Tom, welcome to the show.
Good. Thank you. It's great to be here.
Thanks for joining me. Can you tell folks a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Tom Alexander. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Holistic. Holistic is a data-driven people experience firm. We've been around for about 7 years, and our goal is to help companies do better by their employees in every regard. So we touch every aspect of the employee life cycle. Obviously, diversity, equity, and inclusion is a big part of what we've historically been focused on and what we continue to be focused on. And we've had a great run of it. It's been a very interesting 7 years to be in the workplace. And on a personal level, I live in just outside of Raleigh, North Carolina, with my wife and 3 kids and a dog.
Awesome. Love it. Can you tell folks a little bit about what do you mean by people experience? Give us a take us a little deeper there.
Yeah. So if you go to any business leader anywhere and you ask them what's the most important element, of their business, they're all going to say the same thing, which is people, people, team culture, people, team culture. And by the way, it's not a matter of opinion. There is a right answer to that question. That is the right answer. Okay, so we're doing great so far. All right, then you start to ask them questions about how they take care of their people. And that's where we start to get into a little bit of challenging water. Do your folks trust you? I think so. Well, what about internal communication? How's internal communication at your organization? Well, we did a survey a couple of years ago, and a couple of people told me that they liked it, stuff like that, right? And then it's like, hey, what was your revenue in your Springfield facility in 2019, quarter three? And oh, that was down 1.1%, down to 837,000. That was because truck 17 got a flat tire on August 4th. Remember, Roger was driving because Hank had his hip thing going on. So, and it was like, we would hear the story over and over again, which is business leaders would give business answers to business questions. And when you ask business leaders about their people, which they said correctly was the most important aspect of their business, you start to get into this very like nebulous, wishy-washy type of response. And what we determined was it wasn't because people were lying or because they were disingenuous about their desire to serve their people, is they didn't know how to speak that language. So what we do is we look at every aspect of the employee experience from before you apply until after you leave, and everything in between: onboarding, performance reviews, performance management, promotion and advancement, professional development, compensation, hiring processes. Every aspect. Benefits is a huge one.
Mm-hmm.
And we think about how does the organization measure whether or not it's being successful, whether it's supporting its employees, whether it's building a vibrant and thriving culture. That's where we operate. So that's what we think of as people experience. And we named our company Holistic, and we'll talk about this in a minute, I think, when we get to the 5 things. But we named our company Holistic because these aren't take 2 pills and call me tomorrow types of questions.
Right.
They need to be thought of as encompassing. You need to think about how what you're talking about this morning connects to what you're talking about this afternoon. What somebody's experiencing today is going to influence their job 3 months from now or 6 months from now.
Sure.
And so that's kind of really where we're trying to operate.
Love that. I think that it's so important, the people part, because, obviously organizations are run by people, but right now we're in such a crazy place in our society, in our culture, where there is so much division, where I think people are so afraid of saying the wrong thing. There's a lack of psychological safety within organizations. And there's a little bit of a kind of walking on eggshells energy that comes up in interactions. And I was just on vacation and I traveled by train. and I had the opportunity to have lots of conversations with strangers in the dining car. And, it was an opportunity to kind of find commonalities without having any sort of political conversation, but
Yep.
finding places where we can have a conversation for 45 minutes or an hour while we're eating. And so I have a tool called the ARC method, which stands for ask, respect, connect. So leading with this energy of kind curiosity and bringing that into these conversations. But I think that people are so afraid of saying the wrong thing right now because of cancel culture. I think that they're afraid of getting it wrong. I think they're afraid of accidentally offending someone. And so finding those commonalities and bringing an energy of kind curiosity, I think is lacking a little bit in the workplace these days. Have you noticed that in your conversations?
Yeah, for a variety of different reasons. I mean, the cancel culture you mentioned is part of it. The response to cancel culture is part of it, and
Mm-hmm.
there is a lot of disagreement out there right now, and it is challenging to um, find yourself in an extended situation where you feel comfortable and you feel like you're on the same page with people and what's appropriate and what's inappropriate and all that type of thing. And that's why I often joke that that us agreeing that people are more important than ever might be the only thing that we all still agree upon. And I keep looking for a second thing and I'm not finding it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but that's a great place to start, right? Are your people your most important asset? Yeah. Do you believe that people are more important than ever? For sure. Great. Let's talk.
Yeah.
And then when you center yourself around that, kind of basic truth, that basic point of agreement, it makes a lot of the types of things that you're discussing much easier.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Find and if people are the common ground, if that's the common theme, then lean into that and be values driven about it.
Yeah. I think you and I initially met, Bernadette, because a friend of yours and like we have a mutual friend,
Mm-hmm.
and I met with Colleen and kind of shared a somewhat optimistic view of the future. And you kind of reached out like, hey, Colleen said you had some interesting thoughts about some interesting kind of glasses half full thoughts about the direction that things are going. Can we talk? And you and I had this great conversation about it, and I remember that with fondness because it was one of those conversations where I think a couple of folks were really intending to find opportunity, to intending to find areas of positivity and optimism and hope
Mm-hmm.
and joy and all these different types of things. And too often we're in conversations where those aren't the priorities for whatever reason.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think that we have to keep thinking about how can we shine our light? How can we bring that optimism and hope? And I feel like it's all of our responsibilities over and
Yeah,
over and over again.
yeah,
People need it, right? And if we have the capacity to give it, I feel like there's a responsibility there.
yeah, 100%. There's a complacency that comes as part of human life, right?
Yeah.
You can't constantly be on top level performance. You can't
Yeah.
always be thinking about the big picture. And so we get complacent about everything, about our relationships, about our health, about our mindset.
Sure.
And we also get relationship about our obligation to one another.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
and so I think, these opportunities for renewed focus, however brief, where you sort of um, get in the moment and really think about sort of what's my part of this social contract? What am I bringing to the table? What do you need from me? What do I need from you?
Mm.
How can I elevate that in my consciousness and try and deliver upon that? That's a really useful exercise.
Yes. And it's about being in action, right? It's about being intentional. And I think that is where it's got to start. All right, well, let's move into this week's good vibes. The first story this week comes from is about minimum wage. So, starting July 1st, more than 880,000 workers in Alaska, Oregon, and Washington, D.C., plus dozens of cities from Chicago to San Francisco, saw minimum wage increases, some topping $19 an hour. Nearly 60% of those benefiting are women, nearly half work full time. All this is notable because the federal minimum wage is still $7.25 an hour.
So, do I just give my thoughts? Is that
Yes,
how?
go ahead.
So obviously, I think that folks making more money and receiving appropriate compensation for their work is great. Um, Going back to what I was saying earlier about our company being named holistic, these are holistic types of challenges. And so, what I don't want to hear from anybody is a complaint about how much my Big Mac costs 6 months from now.
Mm.
I read with interest your commentary in your newsletter when you sent me this, and you said something along the lines of, and I'm paraphrasing Bernadette, but you basically said marginalized folks are affected the most by wage disparity in this country.
Yep.
True. Let me tell you what else marginalized people are affected by more. They're affected by layoffs more. They're more susceptible to the consumer economy. The percentage of their income that they spend on, you know, transactional goods is higher, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this marginalization, this vulnerability is pervasive, and you see it in many different places. And so there are these challenges in terms of, especially when we get into this kind of policy mindset as it relates to solving some of these inconsistencies in the way we treat people, which is we solve problem A and everybody starts cheering and high-fiving and congratulating themselves, but they don't think about problems B, C, and D, some of which may have even been exacerbated by that particular action. And that's where you get in this kind of whack-a-mole
Mm.
type of scenario, and it can be very insidious,
Yeah.
right? It was great that I gave you this money, but then 6 months from now, if you're more susceptible to a layoff than you were before, uh, in part because haven't been super. I was happy that you got more money, but I didn't want to be the one to pay for it.
Right.
So there's a lot of that type of stuff happening as well, and there's a lot of that in the discourse, right? Who's responsible for it? Who's paying for it? All these different types of things. So generally speaking, I think that's a very positive moment, and I certainly think any attention that organizations are paying to compensation fairness is
Yeah.
valuable. Any attention that governments are paying to it, valuable. But I would like each individual person to understand their own role in supporting that type of structure as well.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely agree. I think I read recently, not to get too far off the subject, but that the black unemployment rate has gone way up in the past year or so, and I think again it sort of speaks to your kind of whack a mole uh, theory. All right, well let's move into this. Yeah, go ahead.
You know how when the newspaper prints a retraction, it's in 10-point font on Friday
Yes.
afternoon, but when you print the headline, it's in 5,000-point font. There's a little element of that here too as well, right? Which is like there's a lot of energy around the celebration of the good thing, and there should be, but there's very little attention paid to the ramifications of everything down the road.
Mm-hmm.
And so, uh, I launched this DEI initiative for my organization, Front Page News. I slashed the budget for that operation in a budget meeting, doesn't even get talked about.
Right.
But it has at least as much, if not more, of an effect. So, I think those are some types of things that we want to be thinking about as we're kind of evaluating what is a great policy and a policy that we shouldn't be employing. You should make enough money to live if you work at a job.
Yep. But it has to be sustainable for the employer. All
And it
right.
has to be sustainable for the employee. I mean, they're the one who needs it the most.
Yeah, exactly. All right, the second story this week is about disability inclusion. So Starbucks had created a store that was a disability inclusive store based in DC. They have rolled out that framework nationwide. It's called the Inclusive Spaces Framework. It's been open source, so they have shared it with other companies. So Walmart, CVS, Sam's Club, Otis Elevator, and others have joined the Access Coalition to pilot this Inclusive Spaces Framework in their own location and then roll it out. So that includes optimized acoustics, power operated doors, barrier free pathways, and accessible equipment for employees, just as a few. So, pretty big news.
Yeah, I think it's great. I love the open sourcing part of it. I think
Mm-hmm.
there's nowhere near enough open sourcing on the part of organizations. When I was at 1871, we used to say that a big part of inclusion is that if you have a good idea, you're compelled to share it.
Yes.
It relates to like inclusion, right? That like there's no pride of ownership. There's no competitive advantage in this space. Like we're literally talking about including people. So I love the idea that corporation develops something that works and shares it and allows other corporations to take it up. I also like the fact that this is good business. Uh,
Yes.
it's just plainly evident that the motivation for doing this is to make the stores and make the buildings function better for the purposes of the business, which is great, right? And I think this idea of like, hey, we can be inclusive, thoughtful about people, create a great experience for folks, and do business at the same time. We ignore that sometimes, but we shouldn't. It should be the first thing that we talk about. So I
Yep.
love that part of it. And Starbucks, to me, I don't know a ton about what they're doing, but they seem to me, just from my vantage point, to be navigating the culture wars pretty well. When you go into the stores, they seem like inclusive places. Certainly, they're attracting customers from every walk of life. They've had
Sure.
some missteps, they've addressed them. They've had some initiatives that they've led, I think, pretty well. I was in a store the other day and they had some signs up kind of celebrating. One was like Disability Awareness Month, and one had to do with Memorial Day and veterans and things like that. And it was just kind of a very sort of like thoughtful way of presenting that information. It wasn't over the top, but it wasn't hidden. It was there to participate in. It was presented in a very kind of broadly appealing fashion.
Mm.
So, I think that I wasn't surprised to hear about this, but I think that's a great model for a company. We figured something out. We want to share it with you. If you want to do it, great. Call us up.
Exactly. And that's sort of the philosophy behind this show as well, is to take these ideas, be inspired by them, replicate them. All
Yeah.
right, the third story comes from Big Ocean, which is a K-pop boy band whose members are deaf or hard of hearing, and they are blending Korean Sign Language, American Sign Language, and International Sign into their performances. So this band has toured multiple continents, earned 1 million Instagram followers, and landed on a Forbes 30 under 30 list. Very cool here.
Yeah, I really thought it was pretty neat. I mean, the internet's amazing. Instagram, all these different types of things. If you have any talent or skill or particular angle at what you're doing, this is the time in history that you want to have that.
Yeah.
And what the internet has done is really kind of leveled the playing field for folks to have opportunity and to get traction. And you just don't really necessarily know what's going to take off and what's going to be supported. So it's very kind of like uh, alluring, charming, fulfilling to see that type of response, and I love also the fact I was reading the New York Times article that you had linked to, and the people in the band are in their 20s, and
Hmm.
essentially the premise behind what they're doing is like, hey, we have challenges as it relates to hearing. That doesn't mean for us that we shouldn't be able to enjoy music. And I
Yes.
think that's pretty powerful when you think about it.
Yep, exactly. There have been a lot of stories about inclusion on this show related to deaf and hard of hearing folks, including like sound suits that people can wear to experience shows. Like it's really cool what's happening these days. All right,
Yeah.
the fourth story this week comes from New York Fashion Week, where three Black-owned HBCU alumni-led fashion brands made their debut with the help of UPS's Big Motion program. So each brand received $150,000 in grants, plus the coveted New York Fashion Week runway slot to showcase their work. So Undra Celeste New York, the brand label, and Chelsea Grays. It's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, it's a huge deal. I mean, um, again, what I love about here is that this is underpinned by good business.
Yep.
They these folks have been facilitated an opportunity in one fashion or another to compete in the marketplace. And when they compete and they're successful, then they get all the spoils of that.
That's
And,
right.
I think that's very sustainable approach. And when I was kind of reading about this and looking at this, essentially that what they were granted is a little bit of opportunity
Mm-hmm.
to play. What they've done with that is the story.
Yes.
And that's what I'm proud about them for. And that's what I hope that they're going to build upon and thrive and grow. And so, I think this model of kind of like we're giving folks breaks, we're giving them an opportunity, we're giving them a chance,
Mm-hmm.
we're giving them an avenue to compete. That's really a good one. That's sustainable.
Absolutely. And it's been done for other groups for centuries. So why not these folks? Why not these designers? All right, and the last story this week comes from Major League Baseball, where Jen Powell became the first woman to umpire a regular season MLB game over the weekend, working the Marlin Braves games. Meanwhile, at Fenway Park, Nesson aired its first all female Red Sox broadcast with Emma Tiedemann and Alana Rizzo. So, breaking some glass ceilings in baseball.
Yeah, this was the one I was personally most interested in because we are a baseball house like through and through. I'm a baseball fanatic, and my sons play baseball. My daughter plays softball. Like you would not believe the quantity of baseball bats in this house. So it's really interesting. It's a tough time to be an umpire
mm,
in baseball for two reasons. One is the rise of technology has essentially created a level of transparency where everybody is evaluated constantly all the time
mm,
on every. To wit, Jen Powell's first call, which she called a strike, was right up there, very clearly a ball. Next year, that call would have been overturned.
mm,
And I'm not saying it's as a criticism at all. I'm just saying it as a transparent fact, which is, and baseball is moving towards a scenario in which batters and pitchers are going to have a chance to call for a review of individual pitches.
mm.
But it's brutal, right? Imagine you go to your job and the first thing that you do, the first sentence that you write, the internet comes and evaluates it based off of whether or not it was good or not. And it's not a matter of opinion; it's a true fact or not. You're in a subjective moment by moment. So that's challenge number one for umpires. And challenge number two for umpires is that there's been this sense that umpires are um, making poor decisions in terms of their role as it relates to whether they're managing the game or whether they are like part of the show, right? And there's this
Yeah.
sense that umpires are um, a little thin skinned, a little prone to escalation, are exacerbating challenges,
Mm-hmm.
are sensitive to the point that they're ejecting players and things like that. As it relates to Jen Powell, one of the things that I read about her is that she historically has shown really a strong command of kind of in game interaction
Mm.
and de escalation and things like that. Not altogether shocking. I mean, when you read about um, success that women have in the workplace, one of the things that people talk about a lot is EQ and about the interpersonal component of things, right? This isn't me making generalizations. Like these are demonstrated scientific facts and a big reason for why diversity of perspective is valuable in these types of scenarios. So, I think the technology component of it is a challenge. I
Mm-hmm.
think the the interpersonal part of it is going to be the place where she has a real opportunity to shine. And with all these different types of things, I think it's a mix between it's amazing, it's another milestone, it's incredible, and also it's kind of gotten to the point where nobody really cares after 5 minutes, and that's a good thing too.
Yes.
There are women coaches in the NFL.
Yeah.
There are openly gay players in locker rooms across a variety of different sports. I mean, I remember 10, 15 years ago, all this back and forth about, could there be a gay player in an NFL locker room? And that's happened, and it's not a big deal.
Yes.
There's women announcers. There's all sorts of different types of things that have and continue to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And many of them by now are kind of met with a little bit of a yawn. I mean, I'll watch an NBA game and I'll see a female referee, and the only reason why I even notice it is that she has a ponytail. Like,
Right.
other than that, I care less, and it doesn't matter at all. And that's kind of on some level a good thing.
Yes,
Now,
should be.
it, here's the interesting part that we all need to keep an eye on is that baseball in general, I think, is a fairly um, conservative sport, and I
No
think
openly gay players in baseball yet.
right, and I think and even beyond that, like I mean, I think there's some well documented tensions that have occurred over the past few years of the culture wars and things like that that have manifested themselves in baseball. But I also think that the internet is a very challenging place, and it's prone to snarkiness and it's prone to criticism. And there's no question that for folks who are seeking to um, break through a glass ceiling or are getting any sort of like a level of attention or scrutiny that's extraordinary,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to be subjected to an enormous amount of unsolicited feedback on the internet
Sure.
constantly. And here's the challenge is like when things go wrong, as they inevitably will, the cacophony of negative feedback can be almost overwhelming.
Yep.
There's a woman who is an announcer for the Oakland A's named Jenny Kavner, who's had some missteps in her broadcasts, and they've been so well documented that it's almost debilitating. And now there's AI bots making up pretend bad calls and things like that, right? And so, when I saw the first call that I referenced, I immediately clicked at the comments to see what was being said, and there was a lot of pretty negative, kind of cheap shots. I would describe them
Yeah.
as, and that's going to come with the territory. So, as much progress as we've made since, like, let's say Jackie Robinson,
Sure.
and however many different ceilings of all types have been broken, there are still new challenges that occur. And one of the challenges here is this, like, for lack of a better term, DEI higher toxicity that comes with
Mm-hmm.
these types of scenarios, right? Where it's like it's the moment you make a mistake, there are a lot of people out there who will gleefully say, that's because you're not qualified.
Yep.
Not that you're not human, you're not qualified. Bob Costas, who's a legend in sports
Mm-hmm.
broadcasting, announced a couple of years ago that he's not broadcasting baseball games anymore because he had some missteps in his broadcast and which excoriated for them on the internet.
Yeah.
And here's a guy who built the idea of televised, like who's a big
Mm-hmm.
part of the reason of why we're watching sports on TV in the first place.
Sure.
So, I think it's a very interesting set of opportunities. And my hope is that all these different folks that you mentioned and all the folks who are coming in the future who we don't even know their names yet, that they're successful in their roles to the point that we don't know their names again.
Right.
Uh, if
Yes.
you understand what I mean, that it's not notable that they're there, that they're just kind of part of the furniture, or that we're celebrating them alongside their peers as we would anybody else.
I agree. Completely agree. Well, let's move into this week's good vibes to go. I'll share my good vibe to go, and then I'll invite you to share yours. So, my good vibe to go is my friend Julie Kratz's new book, We Want You, an allyship guide for people with power. So, check out that book. I'll put it in the show notes. Tom, what is your good vibe to go?
So I saw a post on Instagram a few weeks ago. It said, "Go to your Notes app," and I'm a big Notes app person. I imagine some of your viewers are as well. So go to your Notes app, and at the top of a new page, write, "People are always doing nice things for me,"
Mm,
and endeavor to write one thing per day.
mm,
So I just started to do it, and Bernadette, and I'm not like a person who is struggling to find gratitude in my life. I was already doing well in that regard, but and
sure.
already a big focus of mine. But it's been amazing experience, and I would recommend anybody doing it. And what the most interesting thing for me, there's actually been two interesting parts of this experiment, aside from the fact that people are always doing nice things for you, and it's valuable to do it. Number one is how quickly you forget. So
Mm,
as I'm looking through this list, um, that I have, I'm kind of like, oh, I totally forgot that 2 weeks ago this person did this for me, or that this person
Mm.
said this to me, or that this person gave me this present. Like I completely forgot it. It wasn't 12 years ago. It was last Monday. And because that's how fast our lives are working, right? So there's value in remembering. And the second part of it was after like a week and a half, I got super frustrated with having to scroll through all the old ones. And I
Mm.
was like, I'm doing this wrong.
Hmm.
I should be putting the new one at the top, and then I don't have to go through all this crap, right?
Sure.
So I did that for a couple of days, and then I was like, no, man, you're missing the whole thing. The scroll is the value.
Ah.
Remembering, it's 2 seconds,
Mm-hmm.
but it's 2 seconds of immersing yourself in something that's valuable and energy giving. And so I've taken that concept and I've actually adapted it to other places. We have this list of all the different business development meetings that we do at Holistic. It's just like I'm in that list every day.
Mm-hmm.
And so this year, there's 300 plus meetings that have already taken place, and they were hidden because you got to get to the ones you need to like focus on.
Sure.
And I was like, we're going to unhide these, and I'm going to commit myself the 43 seconds a day that it's going to take me to scroll through that list 5 times. That's a sunk cost.
Mm-hmm.
I'm donating that to the company
Mm-hmm.
because the value of that is that I see all the names, I see all the activity, I see all the work that we did, I see all the progress that we've made. And that's worth the 43 seconds to me because it's going to, so, I think that as like a good vibe to go, that idea is an easy thing to do. And thinking about the implications of helping yourself remember and helping yourself be able to kind of take a bath in your success a couple of times a day,
Mm-hmm.
um, really going to help everybody's mindset as we move forward.
Love it. And we need that healthy mindset to have the energy to keep moving forward and keep
For
shining our
sure.
lights. All right, Tom, thank you so much for being my guest today. Can you tell folks how they can get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Holisticindex.com is our website. My email is tom@holisticindex.com. Um, we love everything. We love inquiries. We love referrals. We love ideas. We love potential new clients. We love new collaborators. We love everything. At Holistic, we like to say, which I borrowed from my former boss, Howard Tolman, you never know who's going to bring you your future or when. And so we
Mm.
have very much of a look under every rock, answer every email, take every call type of mentality. Um, and after all, the circuitous fashion in which I ended up here required any number of different things to go right and go well. And so we try and adopt that mentality into everything we do. So it's a long way of saying, please do reach out. We're always looking to meet folks and interact with them, and see where it goes.
Sounds great. Thanks, Tom. Folks, if you don't
Thanks
already
for
get the
having
Five
me.
Things newsletter, you can subscribe at fivethingsdei.com. Thanks a lot. Have a great week.